Welcome to Classroom 5.0, a podcast that uncovers industry insights, cutting-edge research and practical evidence-based strategies that help us all to imagine and design learning environments and pathways for this ever-evolving world, so that together we can best support the next gen to uncover and deliver their unique potential. This episode has been recorded from our hometown of Port Macquarie, which we're grateful to share and enjoy alongside the traditional owners of Beer Pie Country, whose ongoing cultures and connections to lands and waters we celebrate, and whose elders, past, present and emerging, we pay our respect to. I'm your host, Marianne Power, co-founder of the Posify Group, and today I am beyond excited to be joined by Dr. Sandy Nicoll, who is a good colleague and friend of mine, and I know you're just going to love everything we dive into today. Sandy brings such a wealth of information, experience and expertise all around pre-service teaching, but also really some commentary and research findings with her PhD around what we're needing to include and reimagine and redesign as we move forward into education. But enough from me. Sandy, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, now, have you got your cup of tea with you? Because
I do. I do. And I normally go, it's a running joke I have with Jason, I go, bonjour.
Bonjour. I like that. I like that.
It's because I made a video on our New Brew website where I'm showing them how to engage students. And I actually have a cup of tea in front of me. And that's how I start, by talking to the students, because it's art. That's bonjour. So, but today I come from Duck Young country, so I'd just like to acknowledge where I'm from. That I would like to respect the elders past, present and emerging. Thanks for inviting me. I think for me, I really want to get my research out there. I think it's time that people started understanding that, in my opinion, there's a lot of things that are not working. And because the old tried stuff is not working, and I think a fair bit of it is about the mindset of the 20th century, and people are thinking more still in the 20th century, and clearly people want to change, but they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do. So I think now's the time for me to start pushing for my research to be listened to.
I could not agree more, Sandy. And I have to say, so when we talk about research, and I'm going to hand this over to you, but obviously you've got your PhD, which people are very aware of. If they just jump on your LinkedIn profile, it's right there and listed. But to listeners who aren't familiar with Dr. Sandy's work, she has got a plethora of peer-reviewed journals. So let's start there, because like every conversation I have with you, we have dived straight on in, right down to the crux of the purpose. I love it. But with all of the research that you have covered, what are some of the findings that stick out for you in terms of sharing what you're hearing is most relevant right now?
Yeah. For me, my heart is with teachers and the welfare of teachers, and it always has been. I did nursing before I did teaching, and I did oncology nursing, so that journey really opened my eyes up to compassion for people, which is more than empathy. So, and I always try and think about how people feel and what they feel. And for me, in 2006, when I first started my journey with research, was by accident, which is pretty much my whole life. That's why I joke all the time. Everyone calls me Dr. Sandy. It's actually quite funny, because if you know me personally, I failed high school. I didn't do very well. And it wasn't until I really did my master's, and I actually came first, that I went, I think I can do this. And it's not because my mindset was that bad. It was just that I was too busy wanting to just teach. And I didn't particularly think research was for me. And it's not my natural mindset, which surprises people. But when I do something, I would give it 100%. And what I give 100% to is teachers. And my master's was on teacher burnout, because I was burnt out and at the time, and I couldn't understand the whole system, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So I looked at this like a socio-political discussion, and it became obvious to me why I was unhappy in the classroom. And a lot of it was embedded in how policy is going. And I predicted in 2000 and in 6 I won a scholarship, an award for my paper I did. So I was really angry one night because of teachers and feeling so frustrated for all of us that I wrote a paper overnight. Maz, I didn't even edit it. I just pressed send to the committee, and I got accepted and I won an award. So
are you serious? And what was the paper? I haven't read that one, I don't think. What was the paper calling? What was the call to action?
It was a call of action to trust teachers. So,
Wow.
so it was called Investing in Teachers Today for Tomorrow. And what I said back then, and I still say this today, if we don't trust our teachers, if we don't embed in policy trust and empowerment and autonomy to act, which is what the OECD has been saying it forever, we are not going to see teachers stay. And that's in a nutshell. So from that passion, I have been researching quietly ever since then, and my PhD was submitted in 2019. I've had to give up a lot financially to achieve this, because when you're studying and when you're working and you've got kids and so on, it's really hard juggling it all. So and sometimes I've had to live on like I call my 2-minute noodle time.
Baked beans on toast.
Yeah, pretty much. But because I truly believe that teachers need people like me to stand up for them.
Yeah,
so,
it's the role of advocacy. And I have to say, it's funny that you mention all that, because the thing that has stuck out in reading some of the papers that I have read, and I say some because there really is a catalogue, but is that point around autonomy and the importance of self-mastery, particularly as, you know, pre-service teachers are coming in and they're understanding what's brought them into the industry, where their purpose is in terms of wanting to educate, wanting to learn themselves, identifying as lifelong learners, and then where the boundaries lie. And obviously there needs to be some scaffolding around what we teach within our education system and how we can deliver that in a way that's regulated. But that piece around autonomy, and so important. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and why it caught your attention?
Yeah, so I've taught now, I added it up when I was writing up my PhD. Back then I had taught 15,000 pre-service teachers.
Wow.
Since then, I know, it made me realise, oh my gosh.
And at what capacity were you teaching, just for our listeners, through universities?
So I was called, I don't work at unis anymore, I was called a generalist. So what that means is I'm a primary teacher originally. And what it meant was, at one uni I worked at, I actually taught on every single subject that they offer.
Wow. Because
I've always liked being in the grassroots. I've never had this big aspiration to be a professor. I still don't. I want to be grassroots change. And so for me, I ran tutorials, I ran lectures, I ran courses, I managed courses, I wrote curriculum, I was on the NESA board for accreditation. Like I've done it all, but I've never just wanted to go high to be a professor, because if I do that, I don't get to teach. And for me, there's no point. My heart is, I am a teacher. I call myself a teacher educator. And what I mean by that is I use my research to inform my teaching, right? And so in a nutshell, for me, when I was writing at my PhD, I remember crying, actually. I actually cried a lot that year. It dawned on me that if we were to believe what AITSA was saying, 4 out of 10 early career teachers leave within the first 5 years. And I knew in my own world, my daughter's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my niece is a teacher. I've got so many friends who are teachers, and I knew in my world that there were so many unhappy teachers still. And this is 2009, and I predicted this back in 2007, and I said at the time, if we keep on, and this is quite controversial, if we keep on going down the accreditation track, if we keep on going down NAPLAN and PISA, what we're doing is accidentally, I think it is accidental, we're taking away teacher autonomy, teacher trust. And by doing that, teachers can't decide grassroots for their own students' needs. They have to follow accreditation. And I really think that, even though I think it was meant for good, I really do, it's a mistake. So, and in my mind, there's been like a combination of things come together. So, for example, neoliberalism is about reductionist ideas. Psychology is really important, but it has dominated teacher education, and that also is a medical reductionist idea. And then we've got the rise of relying on tests and so on. So when you have a look at it, a lot of it is bringing us and funneling us down, and the pressure's coming down on teachers. What I'm saying in my research is, if we actually trust teachers via professional development models, which I have in my master's and my PhD, they can collect data from their classroom, which can then be transferred to their whole stage and their school. They can write school vision plans, so they can meet the needs of their community from the grassroots. Now, this is not new in terms of trying to bring this idea in. It's been tried many, many times before, in the 1970s, 1980s and so on. But I think what happens is we've got to have a framework. We've got to have frameworks, and that's why I've spent years and years and years mastering my frameworks to go, right. So the first one is, and that's where the New Brew Association is based on, trust must start in uni. We must start trusting our pre-service teachers. So many of them say to me, Sandy, well, I'll be a good teacher. I'm not academic. I'm not this. And I go to them, the question, do you care? Why have you got into teaching? And like almost every single one says, I actually really want to make a difference, Sandy. I could have gone into business. I could have whatever, but I truly care. I want to make a difference. My heart is for students learning. And I just know straight away you're going to be a good teacher.
Can we pause there for a minute, because I want to
Sure.
cross-reference something, and it's just the timing of this is hilarious. So yesterday I was listening on my drive back from Sydney to Port Macquarie to one of Adam Grant's most recent podcasts, and he was talking about the Great Resignation, and not in the context of everything that's not working well, but what do we need to do differently, which is what I'm hearing out of what you're sharing, to reshape and do things better. And interestingly, out of his research came in the corporate field that we need to put people and their purpose first. And so what I've just heard you say is, well, what happens if we actually look at who is coming into the industry of education and why are they coming, and what skills are they bringing, what strengths are they bringing, and how might we equip them and empower them with the strategies to be able to better empathize and understand with their students and take a more inquiry-based sort of framework to design. Is this where we're heading? The parallels.
Exactly what my framework
and we
says.
forget, right? Like that cross-disciplinary. It's not just about education. This is happening in every industry.
So my framework
Tell me more.
My framework could be, my first one for my master's could be applied in any industry.
Wow.
So it's
people first. It's trust first at uni. Yes.
Yes. And so the first layer is on the person themselves. So it's only 3 layers. It's very simple. I actually use Maslow's hierarchy, like that easy to follow, because everyone likes the easy to follow framework.
Yes.
The first one is put the trust in the pre-service teachers and the New Brew Association. That's what I've done. Don't put them into subject areas, put them into their sociological passion. What drives them.
Yes.
Right? And this is completely different, because what I keep on thinking is psychology dominates initial teacher education, which I get why, because it's about the me and it's important. But sociology has constantly been dropped in preference to psychology, but they have to be together. Just so you know, as my PhD, I looked at both. Actually, I looked at all 4 pillars, but I really wanted to keep on pushing the sociology because we need to rebalance it. We need both. So in a nutshell, the first level is asking them what their passion is and pursuing that passion with them. So I've actually invented a new framework for initial teacher education, and a new way of learning. And because I know myself, and my PhD was on engagement, when you feel engaged, when you are meeting and you are on your pathway for your journey, you will succeed because you want to. So each one, the association, there are 6 pre-service teachers and myself in the first group. They chose an area that they like. So Jason, for example, chose gender. Natasha and Kyle want to work together because they're partners. They've chosen Indigenous and rural. So what I've done is they've set up their pages based on their choice. I trust them. They get nervous. They come back and check with me all the time, but that's the point. That's why our next research paper, where we looked at so Kang and Chudi and myself, we looked at that transition from the final year to the first year, and mastery of experience and mentoring and induction is essential, which is in my PhD as well. So this is what I'm doing. And Zeichner talked about it. He's talked about it for so long, since 1985. We need to, what he calls, create a third space. And what he means by that is we need to have a gap, something between the gap between university and schools. They don't like each other.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest with you, it just seems like there's this, like, we're either or, we're against each other. No, we've got to come together.
Disconnect.
And we've got to move beyond this blame game attitude. And that's why inclusion is always something that's resonated with me, because you start with people's strengths.
Yeah.
So my research with Stuart Woodcock, for example, we looked at 157 secondary teachers, and what we found was those who had an inclusion lens, they still got frustrated with students, but they were able to give feedback in a more positive framework, which then, and they had things like they had expectations of future success of students with learning difficulties. They would go on and do better. And it comes down to the Gollum effect and Pygmalion effect. So
there is just so much in this for my listeners. I promise I'm going to grab Sandy off the back of this call and I'm going to throw everything in the show notes because I've got I never bring a pen with me to podcast, Sandy, and I'm scribbling notes. I can't keep up.
Sorry, I know.
Before we go, because I want to hear about this. I know you are. I love it.
I just generally want teachers to stay.
Yes,
generally
I know.
Just want teachers to be happy.
Yes.
You know,
can we come back to because I can hear all my listeners like hang on the edge of the cliff for this beautiful framework. So I might have missed it. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I've got one is start with teacher trust in that early pre-service phase from a sociological lens. And you mentioned that there were three parts to the framework. Yes. So level 2 would be for anyone who's missed it.
So level 1 is they're looking at their own professional development, their own growth.
Okay.
So they meet their needs. So their needs might be behaviour management, for example. Level 2.
And based on their particular population of interest?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So coming in at that pre-service level and really doing a purpose audit and saying, great, you want to make a difference, but who are you wanting to, who is your ideal avatar? Who are you wanting to make it? So let's wrap your PD and PL around that purpose because that's where you'll get the intrinsic motivation from. Yes. Now I'm understanding. Great. Yes. Ha! Yes. What a novel idea. Yeah. Okay. So number 2, now what are we doing? So we understand who we're serving.
Focus on the students. Okay. So level 2 would be the first year of graduation, for example, and being a classroom teacher. And what you do is you look at the student needs, and then you'll see patterns. Use data, qualitative first, then quantitative, to work out patterns, basically.
So applied learning, seeing what we've learned in the classroom, but then actually when we get to our students, becoming curious and taking that inquiry-based mindset and feeding back and iterating on what's working well and what's not and filling in the gaps. And then 3? What's step 3?
That's the school vision. So that's for the school leaders. So then you barrel on from early career like pre-service teachers, first-year out teachers, to focusing on the students, to focusing on the school vision.
And what does that look like?
Well, that looks like basically that's when my Nicoll Portraits for practice come into play. Every school has a story. Every school has context. Every school has different needs. So, for example, in Sydney, it might be non-English speaking background students are, the story of your school. Or maybe it's your story of your school is languages, or the story of your school is rural. And so you can find your stories through this qualitative data. Then you do your action plan accordingly, and that's when your quantitative data collection comes in, because then you want to see the effect. So you want to see these are our implementation, this is what we've got planned to do, this is the strategies that we're going to do, but you've got to make sure that actually is working. And
as you say that, I'm imagining that the piece between step 2 and step 3 is for a teacher who's then done their work and moved through that ladder of actualization is really what you're speaking to. That's where I'm seeing the link with Maslow and Scott Barry Kaufman's work around what transcendent self-actualization looks like. So you've got this uber connected teacher who's very clear in your framework of who they want to impact and what that looks like, and now they're starting to gather a toolkit. I think for me, the step is then, okay, so where's the school in their storytelling that aligns with the values and the vision of the teacher, and how can we make a best fit match?
Yes.
Hey there, I wanted to tell you about an exciting and innovative solution we've been designing to help solve this problem of how we best prepare the next gen for an ever-evolving world and future workforce that's going to demand a whole new set of skills and mindsets in order for them to thrive. The Posify Academy is Australia's first student-led, evidence-based and curriculum-aligned wellbeing and career development platform, helping young people aged 10 to 14 uncover and deliver their unique potential. It's the first of a trilogy series that's helping young people move seamlessly and with confidence from education and into industry as they design a life and a career of impact. Teaching skills like communication, compassion, creativity, critical thinking, agility, curiosity, resilience, problem solving, all those human capability skills that we talk about here on this podcast, and connecting them with a sense of purpose. To learn more, you can visit theposifygroup.com.au/posify-academy. Now, back to the show.
From my point of view, that's why you might want to move on as a teacher if that school's not going to be for you.
Yes. Yeah.
We've got to be
really
honest.
being really particular around the vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to be honest in terms of thinking what school I want to work at. Do they align with my vision? Which then,
Yes.
you see, if you listen to me, all my whole conversation is about trust. My conversation is about autonomy. Autonomy for the teachers to act. Autonomy for the pre-service teachers to act. The leaders trusting and giving autonomy. Now, if we look globally, the countries that are starting to succeed. So I was to do a co-tutor between Finland and myself for my PhD. Finances prevented me, like pretty much all my life. Finances holds me back. But I've always got big visions. So it's not.
We're going to change that, Sandy. Don't you worry.
We have to.
We have to change that.
We have to. I know that's always what holds me back is the lack of funding. And the thing is, if you have a look at countries that are succeeding and they're not losing teachers in this current climate, we have to be honest, and it is countries like Estonia, Finland, Norway, the Scandinavian model. If you look at their model anyway, it's not exactly the same as mine because we're in Australian context, but instilled from day one is trust and autonomy.
Interesting.
Okay, and it's done in a different way, and not a slightly different way to how I do it. But the bottom line is this: school leaders also need to be trusted. All right, they need to be given autonomy to choose what's right for their school.
Yes,
and this is why I'm now saying we really need to question the value and the role of accreditation. Why I'm saying this is because I had to look at, I hunted for what they call an exemplar initial teacher education program for my PhD. What I did was I read from 1900 to 2018.
Wow.
Global. Yeah. Can you imagine what's in my brain?
Yeah. I think we're all getting a little piece of that.
Because most things I store in my brain, I don't write. So it's just the way I am. So I looked at Canada, I looked at America, I looked at the UK, Germany, Finland, Norway, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. I tried to find something in Africa, but I ran out of time basically. But I wanted to try and do you should see my floor. It was quite entertaining. My whole floor was a world map.
Wow.
Journal articles everywhere.
Oh my word. You're blowing my mind right now.
It was a running joke with everyone because I'm not joking. I had layers anyway. But that's how I work. I had it all laid out.
Visually
and I had
mapped.
the world map out. And, yeah. And then when you think about memory and all that, it all makes sense. But in a nutshell, I'll be honest with you, I concluded there is no great initial teacher education course globally. There are.
Is that partly context dependent as well? Because you mentioned before, obviously you've localized what you know or what you've seen works well in other countries to the Australian context. Is part of our reach for this perfect model or exemplary model that's globally scalable, not recognizing those differentiations between that macro system and then the micro system of our small regional and remote communities, for example? And tell me more about that.
And as I read it, globally it was decided that there are 8 common threads or common ideas that make an exemplar initial teacher education course. There lies our problem.
Yeah.
How can I, in Australia, say to my friends in Nigeria, and I have friends in Nigeria, follow my model?
Yeah, totally.
But they're collective with their notion of citizenship. How can they possibly follow the Australian model? Same as my friends in China, because my friends in China tried to get me to go and work over there as well. And I was there in January 2020. How can we in Australia say to them, follow our model? There lies the problem with accreditation.
Totally.
The desire to be exemplar, no one questions. The desire for quality teachers, no one questions. But what we keep, in my opinion, getting wrong is we forget about the context. We forget that Australian teachers are different to teachers in China, Africa and so on. That's why my framework, to me, is clever.
Really exciting. Because it's exciting. And, I can. And I think all of our listeners will be as well. And I hate to be stating the bleeding obvious, but what you're doing, your call to action is just, it's bringing education back to human first and people first. And trust is a core piece of that. But it's really that it's beyond intuition. It's using intuition as the mover, if you like, and the point, the compass. And then once we've got that piece, how can we wrap around using learning to teach learning some different tools and strategies to be able to empower people to do what they need to do, which is very collectivist, isn't it, in its approach?
Yeah, so I've realised over time I have a very collectivist attitude.
Mindset. Yeah.
I've got a very strong Christian faith, and I've got a feeling it's because of that. Because I've just always believed in helping others and community will always be more successful than any one individual can be.
Yeah.
And it's common sense to me. So, but if you have a look at America, for example,
very individualistic.
I call America the big, massive battleship that's going to sink. And like Singapore was like a little rowboat, and I called Australia a speedboat. And what I meant by that is, I visualise lots of stuff. But the point is, imagine trying to turn the battleship of America. Yeah. Imagine, like, I can't even imagine being an educator in America. The all that it carries on, like, but in the end, this drive for what's in it for me, is actually bringing our world down. You know, and if we look at it in all honesty, where are the happiest countries in the world globally now? If you look, you'll know that it's, again, the Scandinavian countries. I'm sure there are other countries, by the way. I just think that they've been noticed more. What do they have that's different to, say, Australia, where we're miserable? Well, from my point of view in education, the key difference is they have autonomy to act. If you look at the OECD and they talk about attrition and keeping teachers, they say autonomy to act is essential. They do these Palace reports, and the last ones I read were 2018. Teachers in Australia, we had to do so much administration.
Yeah, and it's just ramped up since the pandemic.
It's just not reasonable.
No.
Now, that's why I like to be in the grassroots, because if I was a professor, I think I would miss it. But when I watch these poor kids, when they go on prac and all the accreditation that they've got to do, they get taken off their focus, their core job. What is it to be a teacher? To teach. To teach students to learn, not to do accreditation. Most of their work is spent on doing the paperwork for the accreditation. We just put that away and trusted them.
And so to be the devil's advocate here, pardon the pun,
that's right.
I can hear certain audience members saying, yeah, trust is great, autonomy is great, no argument there, self-mastery, very important, self-determination theory. And where is the accountability in the model in terms of checking in from a standards perspective? How might we start to support, with this more autonomous way of working for teachers, some form of peer-to-peer feedback or additional review for development?
My Nicoll Portrait for Practice.
Of course it does. She's got it covered. Do we have time to explore that?
Just quickly, yeah. So in a nutshell, that is where you gather in your classroom your data. You present your information to your supervisors for your stage. The data that we collect from the classroom is not just NAPLAN. It is actually assessment so those people who know assessment will know I've just said the three, basically the overarching frameworks for it. It's the context, it's the story, it's also me as the teacher and my role, because my Woodcock and Nicoll research tells me that teachers who are into their own intrapersonal, according to Wiener, and rather than their interpersonal. So when we look at our
relationships driven is how do I relate with other people?
And how we challenge our own classroom, our own mindset when we walk into our classroom, our own classroom layout, whatever, we will actually be more inclusive. So in a nutshell, like I said, you collect data and you take it to your supervising teacher, you will see patterns, and this is what I want to do. I'm setting up to train and to offer professional development on this, because
this is with the Newborough Association, which is your baby. Yeah.
So the Newborough Association is at this stage is on phase 1, which is giving trust to the pre-service teachers, but phase 2 we're moving into it now, where I'm writing professional development frameworks. And one is on behaviour management and so on. In a nutshell, what I'm trying to do is say, right, we can put the data together, we can make a school strategic plan, which is what we're doing in strategic plans, then we can implement the program, and then we can use quantitative data to check. And we've had this conversation before, Maz. I always like qual first, then quant. So, and if you don't trust me, go and have a look at my journal articles. All right. So at the moment, one has a hugely quantitative, but actually two hugely quantitative focused. And we looked and we collected the data. I understand quant well and truly. So, and one paper's had 28,000 reads and 46 citations in a year. So
Wow.
I do know what I'm doing. I do understand quantitative. I do support it. But what I'm saying is we need to go back and look at the story first so that we can work out how to put data together.
Yeah.
So it's practical and usable. Then when we have implemented our evidence-based ideas, all right, because they always have to be evidence-based, we can then test in our own school. And I don't mean test as in a written test. I mean collect data in our own school.
Measure.
Which then quantify and measure it. So,
and suggest where we need to do things differently. For my listeners who aren't so academically minded, or some of these terms are new, so when Dr. Sandy's talking about quantitative data, that's where you'll get the numbers. So you'll get your number metrics. So you might have seen a scale where you get, can you report on a 1 to 5, and you endorse that.
Yes.
When we're talking about qualitative data, that's more around the story. So you'll gather somebody's feedback and then come back and have a look and see if there are patterns and themes. And what I love about I share this love with you, Dr. Sandy, is that I think the richness in the qualitative takes that more sociological approach and that more philosophical underpinning, and it really speaks to this understanding that when we're measuring anything, it needs to come from a position of curiosity rather than assumptions. And I think potentially that the risk of going to the quantitative data first is that's based on assumptions of what we used to know.
Exactly.
As we move into a new paradigm, I think curiosity is going to be key, which is why I am just so eternally grateful for the work that you're doing, how you've managed to condense that into a 35-minute interview in a way where we can all walk away, I hope, as much as me, feeling excited, invigorated, optimistic about the education system that our pre-service teachers are coming into, who, by the way, will be teaching our little humans moving forward. This has just been a joy. May I ask a favour? Please, because my pen is out of ink now with all of these amazing references. I would love to link in our show notes for our listeners your research papers, everything that you're doing at the New Brew Association, and of course, where can everybody find you when they're wanting to follow up?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously on LinkedIn, but go to the New Brew Association. You'll find my email. Join our association. It's free. Yes. All right. My heart is always for the free. Everything free. And also on Orchid, I've got an Orchid number. It lists all my current papers. It lists my vision. I am offering professional development programs to help people with the induction of pre-service or actually early career teachers, professional development, because our three biggies for leaving teaching at the moment is accreditation, leadership, and behaviour management. So, I'm trying to cross those barriers. So basically, Dr. Sandy at thenewbrew.org is my email. Start a conversation with me. You might be surprised. So, surprise would be that's one word. Joyfully enlightened would be the ones that I would choose personally, Dr. Just so
Sandy.
that people understand, I've always, because I've taught for so long at pre-service teachers, I've worked with the ones that have had to do theses where, and core subjects will require pre-service teachers to do quantitative research, theses and qualitative. I was always that person that picked up the people that were struggling. So same as when I was taught in Mount Druitt, I was always the person put on the class with the kids that were struggling the most, because I have compassion for you. I listen to you. I go, okay, this is where your little hiccup is. Let's have a look at that, work on that. And surprisingly, they all end up doing very well, because number one rule for me is I believe in all others.
That's beautiful.
I believe all others can succeed, and I don't care who you are, you can succeed.
We share that absolute passion for helping people unleash their own inner potential, and I'm so grateful that you've shared yours with us here today. If there's one thing that you could imagine or wish as we close out for the future of learning and work and leadership as we start to move into this tomorrow, what would that be?
Trust. It's as simple as that. Trust each other. What have you got to lose by not trusting each other? Look at the mess the world's in. Time to flip it, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sandy. That is all we have got time for today. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another episode of Classroom 5.0. I think I need to go make myself another cup of tea. We will see you later, alligators.
So I have to laugh. You've said yes, you've got time to jump on for this extra question, and I've gone, quick, go get Dr. Sandy. But of course, my internet's gone down just as I did that. So I'm in my kitchen, sitting next to my modem, just so that I can get reception.
Welcome to the world of technology.
And this is I hope you can hear me okay. This is a never been done before Classroom 5.0 experience. I have never jumped off a call and thought to myself, I really robbed myself of the opportunity to ask that question. So thank you for jumping back on with me. That's very sweet.
No problem.
So I noticed myself as we were in conversation together and hearing you reference psychology and how it's positioned in education and pre-service teachers. I noticed myself being curious and not yet wanting to resist or debate you. And yet when I got off the call, I was like, hang on a second, Dr. Sandy, what do you mean psychology is all individualistic and it's all reductionist and it's all... Because I know from the field of psychology about systems thinking and, you know, how we've used sociology to come up with those family systems lens and positive psychology and all the wonderful work of Martella and Steger with meaning. And my question being, not to take away from your point, because I think it was very, very valid, and not to want to position an argument, but I'm curious in terms of where psychology is positioned in the education training.
We probably should.
And what we're missing.
Because so predominantly I've taught on, like I said to you before, I've taught on every subject in undergrad for pre-service teachers. The theory that's often pushed in terms of psychology and educational psychology is very formulaic, you know, and what you're talking about is not the type of psychology I'm thinking of. It's like people think, right, well, I've got that theory and I can just automatically apply it in that linear manner. That's what I mean.
So the stages of life, Erikson, developmental psychology, that type of lens that you're referring to?
Great. So like I've got no problems with what they're saying. It's more the linear way of understanding it and how that's taught at uni. That's what I mean. So when we look at Erikson and Piaget and so on, yes, they are developmental. There's no question about it. Yes, they have a place. There's no question about it. But what I've noticed, and this is what I was trying to say, and my PhD contradicts it, they think, right, well, this is the theory, so I've got to apply it this way, and that's it. In my PhD, each participant, and I call it echoes of theory, what they did was, instead of going, right, well, I'm going to apply this theory that way, this theory that way, they went, it's like a bag of things, a bag of ideas that you take with you, your toolkit, and you apply the toolkit. That's what I mean. So we can't, I would really challenge people who teach psychology or pre-service teachers that they start going, wait a minute, am I setting a mindset of formulaic? Students not formulaic. And I probably didn't make it clearer before, psychology is actually...
Well, I didn't ask the question, and that was what, you know, I jumped off and I realised, wow, you know, I think that there's a good call to action here for us as, you know, as a field, and I would say the human behaviour sciences in general. It comes down to that collaboration, doesn't it? And where are we? So that may have served us for a period of time, and yes, of course, that's a fundamental knowledge piece that's relevant.
Of course.
But to your point, it doesn't always generalise. We know that about everything in the sciences. And so then how might we also start to introduce other disciplines within the field of psychology that are relevant to this new paradigm? So, like, I mean, I've taught on educational psychology since,
2007 I first taught on it.
Has it shifted at all?
I don't think so. That's my observation, and that's why I think that we need to go, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because is it serving the needs of our students, as in pre-service teachers?
Or our teachers either.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. I do not believe that we can be formulaic with teaching, because it's about relationships. And my thesis, and we didn't end up saying this, but my thesis has 4 core themes. There was thousands, trust me, because when you can look at data, you can just see so much. But basically, echoes of theory, where in essence, the pre-service teachers were encouraged to talk back to research, to talk back to theory, because if that is not working, why is it not working? Am I able to use like a mix of it? Then relationships, you know, and what makes a relationship successful in the classroom, particularly mentoring. The other theme was reflection, the importance of reflection. And that's where I started coming undone when I was because I didn't really think this when I first started my PhD, by the way. I've always really loved psychology, and I actually would have thought I would have just done purely psychology for my PhD when I first started.
Wow.
And I was going to go with Vygotsky. So just so you know, I read Vygotsky, Piaget, Perlstein, Erickson.
Of course you did.
Giroux,
amazing.
Bourdieu, all of them, because in the end, it's my brain.
Wow.
I'm just going, yeah, but which one matches my data? Which one matches my data? Which one matches my data? And they didn't.
Yeah,
this is what kept on throwing me. And I kept thinking, but if we can be formulaic, then it should be matching. A theorist should be matching my data, and they weren't. So, because I sort of take more of a grounded theory methodology, as in I don't want to start with a premise. So I didn't even want to start with a premise. I didn't want to research a question when I first started. What I wanted to understand is how they learnt to engage students on prac, and I want them just to tell me. I didn't want to put any of my ideas on them.
Yes.
And then I went with Dewey. And Dewey's and when you look at the core of Dewey's work, he's actually saying the same. Well, I'm saying the same as him. Actually, I'm following him. The idea that we need to think more big picture. We can't be pragmatic all the time. We can't be formulaic, and that's what I mean by reductionist. So, and why I say this, and now since I've done my PhD and I mark assignments, the students think I've got to find one answer. It's an outcome, so I've got to find the one answer.
Yes.
That shuts down inquiry.
Yes, it does.
That shuts down thinking.
Curiosity and innovation.
And if we always think there's only one answer, then we're letting our whole world down. Because what we really, this is why I'm saying what we could be better doing is going, what are the many answers? Does that make sense? So then we're opening it up. It
makes so much sense.
Yeah. So please don't think I'm criticising.
No, I knew you weren't. I knew you weren't. But I jumped off and I thought, oh man, I've robbed myself, and because I know you, and I knew that this would be a flavour of where you were headed, and I robbed myself, and I robbed our listeners, and I robbed this episode of clarifying. Hang on a minute, Sandy. When you say rah rah rah, what do you mean? Please elaborate. So thank you
I've
for explaining.
With this for years in my head,
and I think you're so on point.
Yeah, because
it's really interesting.
We're not the 20th century anymore. We're the 21st century.
Yes.
And if we really believe in what we think are the skills that our employers want, our communities want, it's innovation, creative, relationships, all that stuff. All right, and that's what leaders are asking for in business. Well, then, if we have a look at uni degrees, are we able to balance the pillars? That's what I mean.
Yeah,
we just need to balance the pillars. That's all. It's not. When I'm not talking about going all the way with sociology, not at all, because then we'll just go the wrong way again.
Yeah.
What I argue is, and you can have a look, it's on my Nicoll to connect website. I'll actually send you the link. I call it balancing the four pillars.
I love that.
Because, and what I mean by it is psychology is imperative. It's so important, but are we using it to the best of its pillar? So, and that is that's
amazing. I'm so grateful for my shoelaces coming undone, for Scott Barry Kaufman's interview with Dr. Lisa Miller, which I'm going to throw into the show notes so everybody knows what I'm referring to, and that I had the courage to quickly send you a text message despite having no internet and jump back on this call. Thank you, Dr. Sandy. You are just such a wealth of knowledge, and we are so fortunate, I think, and grateful to be in a world where your voice gets heard. So it's a pleasure to be amplifying it to our audience. You've seen it there. That's a first. It's a first on Classroom 5.0.
I didn't end up ending with this last time. So look, this is what I mean. You are a light. You have to look after your light inside. That's what I mean by my framework. If you don't look after your light, you can't look after your students. If your light goes out, so does your students. So we must always put our well-being, ourselves first, and then we can spread out and we can empower others. And unless we empower ourselves first and look after ourselves first, there's no point.
I love that.
Shine brightly.
You're a beautiful human. Thank you. We'll speak soon.
We will. Take care.
Bye. Classroom 5.0 is brought to you by the Posify Group, a socially conscious education company arming the next gen with a sense of purpose and the future skills they'll need to thrive in this ever-evolving world. Your ratings and reviews really mean the world to us, so if you loved this episode, do let us know and share it with a friend. We'd like to say thanks to our editing guru, Clint Rance, and his team at My Video Producer, who helped us put this show together. And for today's show notes, links, and more episodes just like these, you can visit thepositifygroup.com.au/podcast. Thanks for helping us imagine alive the future of learning. See you next time.